Welcome back to Les Schwab Tire Center's Outdoor GPS, presented by Fisherman's Marine and Outdoor.
Host.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I've got Chris Bertopoulos here in the studio, and we were just showing you how he likes to rig up his wacky rigged pink worm or whatever worm with the cheater, size to hook a cheater, a sequin to keep it from melting, literally, that cheater away, and then some shrink tubing up around the collar of that pink worm. And then, of course, threading that on there, super slick way to do it. And maybe a way that if you fished that way in the past and gotten away from it, because it does start to tear those things out. Super, super cool rigging there. I will be using that myself. Today, though, you brought in a setup and first things first, I'm going to ask for forgiveness as opposed to permission, I guess. Is that the way to put it?
Yeah.
Something like that. I am a float junkie like all of us, right? We've been around for so long. Floats have changed. Robolize, okay, the company that is now making the cheater,
Oki,
excuse me, who is now making the new Oki, right? Bill Herzog was in here. We showed a whole bunch of them, but he's also making floats. Now, I say permission asking. Dave, don't get mad, man. I know you won't, but I have to throw it out there. This is one of the coolest things that I've seen, because it's a counterbalance float.
Yeah.
And that's as far as I'm going to dive into it, because I don't want to get in too much trouble here. But why would you make a change to a different float than what you've been using for, obviously, for quite a while? Is it because it's counterbalanced and it always comes up pink? Or is it just the way it fishes, the way it casts?
Well, this is my first season using them. Thank you, Joe, by the way. And I've only fished them a couple times on the 2 trips that I've done so far, and so far so good.
Interesting.
And what I can say about them is, like, I'm not 25 years old anymore. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. And now the way these work is this float, the color, all the color floats up always because they are counterbalanced, whereas the light gray will be on the the water side, and so anything looking up isn't going to see any fluorescent colors.
Yeah.
I know they would just see a profile pretty much anyway, but sure, this will blend in a lot better than the pink. But I can see a full bobber of color now, instead of just a tip.
Right.
Of the bobber.
Yeah.
And so I can keep my eyes on them a lot better.
Very, very interesting, innovative. And again, I don't mind showing that because that's just something I've not seen before. So other than that, you've got a 3-way swivel. You've got the stick weight that you like to fish. Bill Herzog's the same way.
Absolutely. The stick weight is going to save you a lot of lead and a lot of hang-ups. And if you want to make it even more Teflon, put some heat shrink tubing on it. It just makes them super slick that way. I go some days without losing any sinkers at all.
Yeah.
And that's with clients in the boat. Yeah. The only way I lose sinkers typically is if they cast them in the trees fishing for squirrels. And,
you've all done it. You know you've done it.
I've done it.
Yeah. You know you've done it. And then, of course, on this particular setup, you've got your wacky rig. Anything else? Do you like to bobber dog beads like
I do. I
else,
bobber dog a lot of beads, and typically what I do is I have 4 rods in the boat set up bobber dog and wise, and I run 2 with beads and sometimes a double bead setup, and then I run 2 with worms, and we try and figure out what's working best.
Okay, what makes sense. I mean, would you say, I mean, it's easy for somebody to say every day's different, you got to go out and find the right bait, the right thing. I think that's overplayed a lot, at least in my mind. I know I overplay it. But do you see a difference where one day you're going to go, yeah, man, they wanted worms all day.
Absolutely.
And then the next day you start throwing worms and somebody happens to throw a bead and they won't leave the bead alone.
There are those days where they're going to take everything, or there are those days where they're not really wanting anything.
Gotcha. And
everything in between. But there are those noticeable days where they wanted something very specific. Every once in a while that happens, and if you're fishing lots of different things, you're going to notice that once in a while. Okay. That, hey, they wanted that particular pink worm that day with the chartreuse tail.
Right.
They really wanted it. They didn't want the one that was all plain pink, or they didn't want the beads, but they wanted that one color. That happens sometimes.
Okay, so let's look at this from a perspective of just like me, just a dude that's on the bank, just walking around, or one guy that's in a drift boat or whatever, and he's got a bead on, fishing, not getting bit, but his gear's good. Is that a time where you would just say you've got to start swapping gear out, or just keep repeating the same thing that you're doing?
If you know that there's fish around and they're just not real active, they're not biting, and you got good water conditions, that means start trying something different. Maybe you're going to find something. Maybe you're going to run into something that they want.
Right.
You know, When I get set up in the night before, I'm all fishing gear that has worked for me in the past. And then if I start noticing day here, day there, that something is working better that I've worked into the mix, I'm going to start fishing that more and more. And you just got to give them what they want. I know Buzz Ramsey's famous for saying that. Give the fish what they want.
Sure.
And there's something to that. You know, let them tell you what they want. And if you're fishing different things and trying new things, you're going to find what they want.
Yeah, and you know, to piggyback on that, again, I fish alone a lot, or you know, hike in with other guys, and so we're basically fishing on our own. If you've got dudes in the boat with you, or if you're out, you know, everybody, if you do communicate with each other, and there's a lot of us that won't do that, even your closest friends, you're like, if you do that, you will start to find that you'll catch more fish, because you'll pick up. Last year, if you remember, it was Fish Killer Freddy that said, dude, fish the 20, and went to that, and my season just progressed from there, fishing those big beads. So it's worth taking the time to do it. I do have to point out, though, everybody likes to fish their beads a little bit different, because there's so many different ways that we can do it. You've actually got the noosh knot, which is just a loop knot with, looks like a size 2 here, and then a size 14 mil soft bead, a sequin on top of that, which is stopping on top of your knot. So also very popular way to set up your bead rig so that it doesn't, of course, slide down to the hook. But one of the things I wanted to point out, and we've got this question, I think it was Pro years ago that had mentioned this rigging, is how that hook kind of stays away from the bead itself. Kind of a interesting way to look at it is the fact that that hook isn't going to be flopping all over the place. I do think that it does maybe help getting a hook in there, because we all know fishing beads, you can hook a lot of fish and watch a lot of them spit the hook. And it might be a way to go, at least something to consider, different than I do it and different than lots of people do it, but it's a great way to set it up. But you got a ton of different colors here too that you brought in. Do you find yourself playing around with a lot of different colors? Do you, is it just watercolor that makes you make a change? Or
that's generally what drives when I start changing colors and stuff is available light and watercolor. And we all love that steelhead green, but what can kind of change that a little bit is, do you have sunlight or do you have an overcast dark day?
Right.
You know, when the water's got color to it and there isn't much visibility, fish the brightest stuff you can and bigger profile stuff.
Sure.
When that water, as it drops and gets into lower clear conditions, downsize your profile and fish more subdued colors, especially if you've had fish that have seen a lot of beads and a lot of worms and a lot of stuff go by. Size down your gear, because the fish get a little spookier.
Sure.
Because they've seen so many, I call them beach balls or orbs floating by.
Floating by. Sure,
That's when you want to show them something different.
Gotcha.
And oftentimes something a little smaller.
Bait. Are you still using eggs much for steelhead?
You know, I do.
Or shrimp.
And shrimp. But what I've moved towards more than anything else is spawn sacks.
Oh, yeah.
Because they just, they hold up. They stick together. And
Brian,
you can use
tech
them
tip,
over and
write
over.
this down, spawn sacks, tech tip. Anyway, okay.
Even if you're going as far as cutting some chunks of eggs in a skein and rolling them up in a spawn sack and twisting them up, you're just going to be fishing more effectively.
Yeah.
Because they hold together much better, and you're going to get more casts out of them without having to reel in and put new baits on all the time.
You've always got that color, you always got the scent going on, you've always got something out there.
Yeah.
Similar to why we love beads so much, because you're always fishing, but there is something to having that real egg scent.
Oh, absolutely.
Down there.
Yeah.
When you rig a spawn sack, and forgive us, I don't have that in here, are you just skin hooking that thing right onto the shank of the hook? Are you positioning it differently?
We got your spawn sack, and where you've twisted it and clipped it off, that's the place to put the hook.
Okay.
Right under.
So that it ultimately sits on that.
On that little knob that you've clipped off, where you've clipped the excess spawn sack off, that's where you put the hook.
We've shown
it's just
that.
hanging off.
We need to do it again, because it was a question here recently. It is a deadly effective way to go after puffballs. It's the only reason why I own puffballs anymore. All right, we're going to cut to a break. When we come back, I've got a question for Chris. This is from Stefan, and he's got a question for him. So we're going to take that question. Looks like a good one about worm fishing. When we come back from this break, don't go anywhere. We've got more with Chris Bertopoulos and Outdoor GPS in just a minute.
Outdoor GPS is brought to you by Yakima Bait, steeped in tradition, innovation, and fishing success. Procure Bait Sense, ruthlessly effective. And by North American Metals Incorporated, first choice for all your metal roofing and siding needs.